Beginning with the theory of dualism, in mid 20th century, the emphasis of development economists was on the underdeveloped countries or the third world countries which have just gained independence. And so they were trying to sort out the reason of underdevelopment of societies in Asian and African countries. This led Julius Hermann Boyke in 1953 to coin the term dualism, and he ascribed the existence of dualistic societies in third world countries as the major reason for their underdevelopment. In simple terms, dualism stands for coexistence of two well-developed systems within a country. This theory is based on the Indonesian experience but has got a huge application to other similar societies like India, where dualistic societies exist. Boyke described social dualism, whereas Benjamin Higgins concentrated on technological dualism. Now, beginning with social dualism, Boyke suggested that any social system is an interplay or interdependence of three factors. Those factors are social spirit, that is, what is the collective spirit of a society, the organizational form of the society, and the techniques that dominate it. The prevalence of two or more synchronic or full grown systems alongside each other in a country is called dualism. Dual societies generally have existence of an advanced imported Western system and indigenous pre-capitalist agricultural East. These East and West represent a definite culture, a definite philosophy of life, which have not been blended but is at clash with each other. The existence, these Eastern and dualistic economies are synonymous terms. The features of dualistic economies are that as compared to Western economies, they give overriding importance to social needs. So for them, their status in society and social obligations are important than individual obligations. They have limited human needs, which leads to low economic motivation to produce more, which results in low level of economic activity. Dualistic societies have family as the basic unit and individual self-sufficiency is the dominant idea. The mainstay of these societies is agriculture, but cultivating food crops is not a major source of income there because they produce for maintenance of household and do not regularly exchange these products in money terms, and hence the income so generated cannot be strictly called income in economic sense. The supply curve of effort and risk taking in these economies is backward bending, meaning thereby that if the price of the commodity is more, they will prefer to produce less. The native industries in these economies have no organization, they are technically helpless and are ignorant of market. People are not induced to organize production or for collective investment. Labor in such economies is basically unorganized, passive, and silent, which leads to some certain specific kinds of unemployment in these countries. These are seasonal unemployment. That is, at the time, if sowing season is not there, people are unemployed. Unemployment of casual workers, unemployment of regular laborers, and unemployment of urban white collar workers. In such economies, development is not guided by economic needs. It is basically guided by their social needs. The reasons for underdevelopment in these societies, Eastern societies, is not the same as that of Western capitalist societies. However, the introduction of capitalism into pre-capitalist peasant economies disturbed the equilibrium of these economies, their economic system, and also obstructed the gradual development of capitalist forms, which is comparable to those in the evolution of Western economy. Any effort to develop pre-capitalist agriculture along Western lines may cause retrogression, as has been suggested by Boyke. So Boyke suggested that the Western system should not be intermixed with the Eastern system, Eastern economic system. However, this concept of social dualism was heavily criticized by Benjamin Higgins on the lines that Boyke suggested the wants in Eastern societies are not limited, which Higgins said was not true. The casual labor in these societies was not organized, which again Higgins said is not very true. Eastern laborers are not immobile, they are not peculiar to underdeveloped economies. It is not a theory but a description. What Boyke suggested does not confine into the outlines of a theory, but he has just described the Indonesian society. The tools of Western economics theory can be used in Eastern societies, and it does not provide a solution to the problem of unemployment. On these lines, Higgins criticized the Boyke version of social dualism, and so Higgins gave his own version, which is technological dualism. The technological dualism implies the use of different production functions in advanced sector and traditional sector. Advanced sector is the imported sector and traditional sector is the indigenous sector. The traditional rural sector possesses agriculture and handicrafts or very small industries. It has variable technical coefficients of production, that is, a huge amount of labor can be mixed with any amount of capital, and so they have a wide range of technique to produce agriculture and handicrafts. But primarily the factor endowment is such that labor is relatively the abundant factor. The advanced sector, on the other hand, is composed of plantation, mines, or large-scale industries. This sector has fixed technical coefficients. That means no technical substitution is possible. In other words, capital cannot be substituted by labor in this sector. So this sector is heavily capital intensive. This technological dualism increases structural and technological unemployment in advanced sector and disguised unemployment in rural sector. According to Higgins, technological dualism is more fruitful than the concept of social dualism because he finds that the actual pattern of demand has been such so as to bring increasing conflict between objective of optimal output and full employment. The demand for exports grew at a higher rate due to rapidly expanding industrial economy, whereas the demand for rural output grew only at the rate at which the total population increased. Because the advanced sector has fixed technical coefficients, it introduces labor saving techniques. In this type of industry perpetuates tendency to dualism. Summarily, the industrialization leads to the growth of population much in excess of the rate of capital accumulation in the industrial sector. Since this sector uses capital intensive techniques and fixed technical coefficients, it is not in a position to create employment opportunities at the same rate at which population grows. Rather, industrialization may even bring a decline in the proportion of total employment in that sector. Thus, the surplus labor has no other alternative except to seek employment in the rural sector. Before the start of the expansion process, the rural sector has neither an abundance nor scarcity of factors of production. In the beginning, it may be possible to absorb the additional labor force by bringing more land under cultivation. This leads to the optimal combinations of labor and capital. This capital can be improved land also as output increases. Eventually, good land becomes scarce. The ratio of labor to capital available in that sector rises steadily, and since technical coefficients are available, techniques become increasingly variable in this sector. For example, in many Asian countries, irrigated rice cultivation has been substituted for shifting dry rice cultivation. Ultimately, all available land is cultivated by highly labor-intensive techniques, and the marginal productivity of labor declines to zero or even below zero. Thus, with continuing growth of population, disguised unemployment begins to appear. Under these circumstances, farmers have no incentive either to invest more capital or to introduce labor-saving technique. Besides, there is no available technique to increase the output per man and no incentive on the part of labor to raise production by themselves. As a result, techniques of production, man-hour productivity, and socio-economic welfare remain at a low level in rural sector. In the long run, technological progress does not help in removing disguised unemployment. Rather, it tends to augment it. Professor Higgins contends that during the last 2 centuries, Little or no technological progress has occurred in the rural sector, while there has been rapid technological progress in the industrial sector. This has tended to increase the number of disguised unemployed. The situation is further aggravated by keeping wage rate artificially high by trade unions activities or by government policy. For high industrial wage rates relative to productivity provides an incentive to entrepreneurs for introducing labor saving techniques and thereby diminishing still further the capacity of the industrial sector to absorb surplus labor. Accordingly, these factors perpetuate tendency towards technological dualism in underdeveloped countries. Other than social and technological dualism, there are certain other views on dualism also, among which the first is that economic and regional dualism is often the consequence of a social dualism. Regional dualism is the regional inequalities. That is, in case of India, we have Punjab, Haryana, and Western Uttar Pradesh as more flourishing states in comparison to Bihar, Assam, or Odisha. The dualistic development is not a specific feature of some individual countries, particularly these underdeveloped countries, as has been suggested earlier. It has been observed that in many transition economies at different periods of time, such as the 18th and early 19th century Western Europe, economic dualism existed. The crux is that the development in dualism concept is the suppression of traditional sector by concentrating on and expanding the modern sector. The trickle-down effects of the development of advanced sector will reduce and abolish dualism as was thought about, but the main problem in this assumption is the capital formation, as its degree determines the scope and speed of expansion of the modern sector. Coming to the other views on dualism, because stresses the dualism of specific factors or technological dualism, not social dualism, which causes less development, and in this sense he supports the view of Higgins. Ganesh explained dualism on regional basis, which is lack of communication exchange between regions that create distinction and difference. The other concept is that of the concept given by Lewis in the form of unlimited supply of labor, which suggests that the underdeveloped countries is divided in two sectors. One is a rural subsistence agricultural sector, which has unlimited supplies of labor, and an advanced industrial sector, which in times absorbs this unlimited supply of labor. Ranis Fay extended the Lewis model with micro foundations and reformulated it in a neoclassical fashion by considering the case where unlimited supply of labor is over and the agricultural sector is fully commercialized. Another aspect of dualism is financial dualism as propounded by Professor Mint. He suggests that LDCs have two sectors. One is an informal sector, other is a formal sector. Informal sector constitutes of non-institutional financial institutions such as the landowners, and the organized sector is there, which constitutes the banks and other NBFIs. Nurse in his theory suggests that disguised unemployment or surplus manpower exists on a large scale in underdeveloped countries, which can be converted into a real source of wealth. He corroborates the theory given by Arthur Lewis. Disguised unemployment can be used for capital formation and can be put to work on projects like irrigation, drainage, and housing, etc. The process of converting the unproductive labor into productive labor should be financed from within the economy, and people should be prevented from raising their consumption so that the economy remains at equilibrium. C.N. Vakil and P.R. Brahmanand later on have elaborated Nurse's theorem of disguised unemployment as a saving potential. According to them, the transfer of surplus manpower from agricultural sector to capital sector be a self-financing process which can be eliminated through forced savings by people. Now, let us now summarize what we have learned in this module. First, dual economy is an economy where a modern manufacturing sector and backward sector, which is mainly agriculture, coexist simultaneously. The urban industrial sector is capital intensive, which use the modern mode of production with a high division of labor. Agricultural sector is comparatively a big one, which is traditional subsistence sector, It consists of small-scale agriculture, handicrafts, and petty trade. It has a high degree of labor intensity and little division of labor. Dualism is not confined to the production alone, but often reflects differences in social system, racial and ethnic backgrounds, demographic behavior, consumer expenditure, and consumer savings behavior, and thus the role of domestic and foreign sectors in economic development.